Well, one précis of what you've just heard from Gabriel is that we're in a race against time. And so my talk is to give you a progress report on how that race is going, at least one person's perspective on it. We are in a great global energy transition. It's a complete system change of the kind that we very rarely have seen in history. And I'm going to seek to persuade you that this is actually going a lot faster than most people appreciate, and you will see some remarkable things in the next few years as it unfolds. So my story begins in June 2015 when the G7 leaders were in Germany, and they announced at the end of their summit that in the Paris Climate Summit at the end of the year, they were going to be seeking a complete withdrawal from fossil fuels within the century, and mostly in the front part of this century. And that, of course, is those leaders' response to the kind of scientific advice they're getting from the Met Office and NASA and everything else. Few people believed it could happen in Paris. And lo and behold, you know, we're sometimes capable of unexpected surprises. And 195 independent governments in the world turned up in Paris and surprised everybody, including probably they themselves. A clear signal. This isn't a perfect treaty, but it is a decarbonization pact, and it has a ratchet mechanism in it that's legally binding. This was remarkable. Very few people thought it would happen, but again, it reflects the kind of seriousness with which people are responding to this issue now, not just in governments, but right across civil society. So that decarbonization requires that we have a lot of renewables, maybe totally renewables, running the energy infrastructure of the planet. And the good news starts with the economics, because in recent years there's been spectacular cost down in the leading renewables, wind and solar photovoltaics. And here you see plots for three of those, with the band of fossil fuel costs in pink across the bottom, and the years 2010 to 2020. The blue dots are projects around the world in multiple countries. The red dots are auction results as utilities convert to renewables. And you see we're already down in there with the fossil fuels. We're already beginning to replace them just on economic grounds, never mind about climate change. So this is one to try on your friends at dinner parties. Every time I try this on people who aren't following the pattern of play, it amazes them. Last year, solar was the single biggest sector for new global power capacity additions for the second year running. It's up at 38% now, with $160 billion of capital going in. Not enough, but an impressive amount. It's serious money. Wind is second in that. So we're seeing remarkable things, like in China in 2015, all of their new power demand, all of it came from wind and solar, huge installations. In Europe, 90% of the new power in 2016 came from renewables, and Lisbon went 4 straight days run only on renewable power. This year, they went countrywide for a whole month just run on renewables, particularly windy month, particularly wet month, and the power was less expensive than it had been the previous year. Denmark's now up at more than 43% on an annual basis, and the incumbents have always said, you know, if you have more than 20% renewables, your grid will collapse, it'll be a disaster, we have to use fossil fuels or the grid will go all crazy on us. No, they're at 43% and no significant problems. And the turbines get bigger, they're going offshore so that the people who don't like the look of them don't have to be so worried. And these are amazing feats of engineering. This is the latest, the world's most powerful turbine being installed earlier this month off Scotland. 1 turn of the blades of that turbine can power an average UK home for an entire year. So this isn't, you know, hippie technology any longer. Cities are very important. It's not just about national governments. Local governments, very, very important in this drama. 43 cities are now 100% renewable powered. No big ones yet, but that's coming. You can see it in seriousness of intent. The corporate world, I speak as an environmentalist business person, with some pride, actually, about what the corporate response has been. Quite remarkable. Google, earlier this month, reached 100% renewable power for all its operations across the world. This includes servers, incredible energy guzzlers, with electricity use growing in double digits each year. A few days later, they're competing with each other. So Apple, a few days later, reached 100% renewable power. Everything in 43 countries, and Tim Cook, the CEO, saying, we're not, this makes business sense, but we're doing it because the future depends on it, as he puts it. And if the 122 companies that have joined together on 100% renewable targets, they're called the RE100, if they were a country, they would have an electricity demand from renewables already met that would be greater than the size of Poland. They'd be 24th in the global league table. So already in places, solar is cheaper to install as new technology than actually running the old stuff. And here's one of the first in Wisconsin, the entirely inappropriately named Pleasant Prairie coal-fired power plant being shut down to be replaced by a new solar plant. This is beginning to be reflected in demographics. So this is American workers in renewables as of April 2017, way more of them than in gas and particularly coal. And you wonder how the 55,000, because this is utility coal as well, workers have such political power, and what could be done if we were a bit better organized in the renewables companies. And this is particularly because, this is so popular. It is not a political issue. It's popular across populations. Biggest survey so far, 26,000 people, 13 countries, 82% of us saying, it's important to create a world fully powered, not partially powered, but fully powered by renewable energy. And I think this, if there's one slide and this repeats themes from earlier in the day. The one slide to remember is this. Futurists in Silicon Valley make the point, like Ray Kurzweil here, make the point that, we're not good, none of us, even if we profess to be experts and energy analysts, we're not good with exponential functions. We can't get our heads around them. Solar's a good example. It's doubled in installation every 2 years since 2000, so that's 8 doubling. It's still a tiny fraction of global energy supply. But you do 6 more doublings, and on that historic periodicity, that would be by 2028, you're providing all the world's energy. Now, this isn't going to happen, of course, because solar's not a magic bullet. It doesn't have to be. It's just one member of the family, a particularly important one. But it gives you a feel for the bullishness that people like me have when we look at the future and look at our experience on the front lines. Because it's not just about solar, it's about all wind, it's about batteries, and the same thing there. There's this huge cost down being driven by volume economies of scale. So exciting. We've got 7 of these new gigawatt-scale battery factories being built by companies from all around the world in Europe. By 2020, this is the scale of the thing that Tesla is building in the desert there in Nevada. And this is really bad news if you're a CEO of an oil and gas company. Already we're seeing a hookup between solar and batteries destroying the market for gas by being cheaper. And that's happening in California, Arizona, and in Australia there's a wonderful drama to watch. The biggest battery in the world so far, it won't be the record for long, on a wind farm in South Australia. And what it's doing is undercutting the little scam that the gas cartel, as Renew Energy calls it in Australia, has whenever they need to balance the frequency, control the frequency on the grid for a short period. Of course, the gas companies historically have charged a fortune. That's all being knocked out by that battery kicking in just to the vital time. And this all links into electric vehicles. Now, there are some young people in the audience today, and if you harbor the ambition to become a chief executive one day, note the required dress code. It won't please our sponsor at all, I'm sure. But all of the car makers, the point is all of the car makers are now heading for the electric future. They have to. One in China has just said, well, forget all the other stuff. We're going completely electric from 2025. And then on top of that will come this digitalization, which is so exciting. This is the application, the good application of the artificial intelligence that we've heard quite a bit about today. Increasingly, this will be put right across the network of renewables, smart grids, electric vehicles, cars becoming power plants, homes and buildings becoming power plants, all with the efficiency optimized by digitalization. So exciting. And for a practitioner, you can imagine what it's like for us, Solar Century. I mean, I started campaigning on climate change for Greenpeace, and now I watch the wonderful folk in the company working with Nissan on batteries and solar, but also IKEA, behind the IKEA brand, partnered with IKEA as they try to become the world's leading retailer in solar roofs. And remarkable people in remarkable places smelling the coffee here. People aren't blind, they see what's coming. One of my favorites, Abu Dhabi in 2016, the Crown Prince saying to his people, you know, we get ready for it. We're going to be out of oil in 50 years. I think it'll be a lot less than 50 years. You won't be sad because we'll have invested in all these new clean fandangos in the interim. So for the incumbents, they are responding to, the utility industry is particularly interesting. All major European power companies have admitted they have to do 180-degree U-turns in their business models. They've all committed to carbon neutral power well before 2050. The oil and gas industry has a broken business model as well in the face of all this. It's not so acute, it's more slow burning, but single fact to make the point, in 2016, despite huge cuts in their expenditure, most of them didn't even cover their costs at $50 oil. So they're producing oil and gas, they're not able to sell it for the drilling cost. And here you see the case of shale, which we hear so much about. These are the 33 biggest exploration and production companies in the 4 main areas where shale is drilled in America. And they spread right across from 2012 to 2017. So every oil price you can imagine, high and low, and look at the net cash, negative in every case, in every region, in every year. This is not a business model that you want to be associated with. They're piling up a mountain of debt. It doesn't get reported enough in the press. Too much, we have to go to fringe websites to see it. Bloomberg's data called a debt wall here, facing these drillers coming up in 2020. And in 2016, they were having to spend 75% of their operating cash flow just to pay the interest on that debt pile. We don't have those problems in the renewables companies. And, you know, unsurprisingly, some of them are getting it. So Statoil renaming itself as Equinor because it sees the future as being renewable and clean, but still, Elder, the CEO, making the point that by 2030, they'll only be deploying 15 to 20% of their capex. And I'm willing to bet anyone here a very fancy dinner that it's probably going to be the other way around. They'll be lucky if they're spending 20 to 30% of their capex on oil and gas by 2030. And those of you who are investors and want to dig a bit deeper on that, my email is the obvious one. We know that one company has already done it. It's not one of the major oil and gas companies, but it is Danish Oil and Natural Gas, DONG. So every time anyone from Shell or BP says, oh, we can't do all that renewable stuff, you know, we're oil people, you can just say DONG. And they did very well as they made the transition. As of November 16, by October 17, they decided to change their name too. They're now called Ørsted, after an electricity pioneer in Denmark. So, you know, we have evidence that it can be done. The oil and gas industry will soon be following the utility industry, I predict. It can be done profitably. We have evidence of that. It can be done sustainably. That's what this is all about. And it can be done with technologies that are cooler, cleaner, smarter, much smarter, less costly, more communal, less resource-stressed, independent energy, more safe, apropos Scylla's talk, more secure, And everything I've told you from 2013 to 2017 can be read about in a little book called The Winning of the Carbon War. Not how the carbon war has won, we haven't won it yet. But that covers 2013 to 2017. 2018 onwards, you can follow the drama on my website, that you see the address there. And I include on that website the overlaying drama of tech and the future of civilization as well. But that, as they say, is another story. Thank you for listening to me.